All right, so move on to the next segment. We're going to pivot over here to the world of MMA inside the UFC world. And I'll be sharing my UFC Dream White House card. We know that the UFC White House card will take place next year, July 4th, at the White House in 2026. Now, I know Dana White and the UFC is going to do it big at the White House, but this will be my own personal list and my own personal card of the dream fights that I would have for the UFC at the White House next summer. So my UFC White House dream card, I would have Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall for a heavyweight title fight. Is it going to happen? Time will tell. But I still think that's a big marketable fight. Even though Jon Jones ducked Tom Aspinall, even though he retired, even though he vacated the heavyweight title, if Tom Aspinall is successful in his first title defense or 2 title defenses by next summer, why not let Jon Jones come back to prove why he's the GOAT and fight the next biggest thing at the heavyweight division in Tom Aspinall to reclaim his heavyweight title that he truly never lost. I think that's still a big marketable fight. Fingers crossed that we get that next summer. Next on the card, I would have Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight title. Now, I don't think they're going to wait that long until next summer to have that fight, but I think both of these women will share the octagon once with a big rematch happening at the White House in the summer of 2026. Next, I would have Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor will fight each other at the UFC White House. Plus, Conor McGregor is deserving of making this card. He's one of the biggest combat sports stars in combat sports history. And next, I would have in a BMF title fight, I would have Max Holloway versus Paddy Pimblett if Max Holloway still holds the BMF title. I think those 4 fights are really big and would be really special to have on the UFC White House card next summer. Will these fights happen? All 4 of these? No, possibly not. But they're going to have to do something big in order to sell what could be one of the biggest UFC events of all time. You're going to have as big of a card as like you did a year ago at UFC 300. So I think the UFC is going to do some really special things to make this card very memorable. The first ever UFC event at the White House. I can't wait till that happens next summer. But a deeper dive in the reasons why I had these 4 fights on the card. Going back to the first fight that I said, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is a huge fight to be made still at the heavyweight division. Now, a fight that we should have gotten with Jon Jones that did duck Tom Aspinall. He did duck him. By next summer, I believe Tom Aspinall will probably have 1 or 2 successful title defenses under his belt at the heavyweight division. He's already displayed why he's the next big thing at the heavyweight division. Had 2 interim. Did he have 2 or 1? I think he had 2. No, 1. He had 1 successful interim title defense against Blades, and he looked good. But I think the fact that Jon Jones did walk away, knowing that Tom Aspinall was waiting patiently for that title shot. It was either you vacate the title or you're not going to do a fight here anymore, in the words of Dana White. And I think Tom Aspinall is going to need a serious challenger to fight by next summer at the heavyweight division. And if it's not a Alex Pereira that's trying to be the first ever 3-division world champion in UFC history, I don't know who Tom Aspinall would fight at a stage like this at the UFC White House. I think Jon Jones is eager to return now, and with some motivation now that he can fight at the White House. That's something that, as a true heavyweight American for Jon Jones, I think that would be something special for him, and possibly another notch to add to his illustrious UFC career, being successful, winning a title at the UFC White House. I think this fight is still massive between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall at the heavyweight division. So never say never. And I think Jon Jones would definitely love the idea of getting in the octagon with Tom Aspinall, with some motivation behind him, fighting in the White House, or outside the White House, in the UFC White House event. So I think that's still a massive fight to be made. Back to the woman, Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. Now, they're not going to wait that long for these 2 women to share an octagon with each other. But I think if they fight each other before then, why not run the rematch if it's a competitive fight, no matter who gets their hand raised, whether it's Amanda Nunes coming back and defining the odds and defeating the next big thing at Kayla Harrison, or it's Kayla Harrison defeating one of the greatest women's fighter in UFC history, and Amanda Nunes. So I think if it's a competitive fight in the first fight, why not give us a rematch at the UFC White House between one of the greatest of all time, Amanda Nunes, and the next big thing, Kayla Harrison. I think that would be something that fans would want to see. The first fight is competitive for the Bantamweight Championship at the White House. Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Obviously, this is a fight that we should have got a long time ago. But I think Dana White will not throw Conor McGregor to the wolves. I think he wants Conor to be a part of this event. As I said a few moments ago, he's deserving of making this event. He was the biggest box office attraction in UFC history at one point. One of the biggest pay-per-view stars in combat sports history, UFC or boxing alone. So, yes, Conor has been out of the octagon doing whatever for the last 4 going on 5 years, but I think Conor McGregor does deserve his to end his UFC career on the right foot, whether it's a win or a loss. He deserves to be back in the octagon one more time, and that will actually be by next summer. It'll be 5 years, nearly a decade since Conor stepped in the octagon. But he does deserve a spot on this card, and we'll finally see him fight someone like Michael Chandler. But again, he's not getting anybody other than Michael Chandler, because Dana White's not going to throw him to the wolves. He's been inactive for 4 years at this point. So it's either Michael Chandler or bust for Conor McGregor to return to the octagon. But I think they'll finally get that fight done, and that will be one of the biggest fights to be made for the UFC White House card. And last but not least on the list, I had Max Holloway versus Paddy Pimblett for the BMF title. I think this would be a fitting way to prove who is worthy of being the BMF champion in the UFC. I mean, every time we see a BMF title fight, it's 2 guys going to war with each other to prove who is the BMF of the UFC. The way that the division could play out, the lightweight division, in the next several months, it's a loaded division. I mean, we got a lot of names. We got Ilia Topuria, who's the new king of this division. Charles Oliveira is still there. You still have Dustin Poirier. There's Arman Sarukian. There's so many names at this lightweight division. These guys are going to have to get in the octagon with each other. We're going to see how things play out. But I think if Max Holloway is still the BMF champion, Paddy Pimblett has one more successful fight before trying to get a title shot for the lightweight title, because I don't think he's ready to get a lightweight title shot against Ilia Topuria. But I think how that could play out for the BMF title, the winner of this fight in the summer could get a future title opportunity down the road at the end of 2026 for the lightweight championship, whoever is the lightweight champion at that time. But I think this would be a fitting way to put this fight on the card. It'll be some really good fireworks for the 4th of July at the White House between Paddy Pimblett and Max Holloway. Some great striking exchanges between the 2 respective fighters in the octagon. I really think these 4 fights would be really special fights to put on the UFC White House card. And especially, they're going to do it big with this new Paramount deal that the UFC has. So that's going to be one of their biggest events next year. You're going to see a lot of talent on that card with on the premiums. On the main card, it's going to be special. But those are my own personal fights that I would have on the UFC White House card.